But we've got a lot of pushback about perfection, needing to be perfect. For a lot of people, particularly in our culture, and women, I'm told, I've heard this more from men, I'll say that having been made to feel like you need to be perfect has been a real trigger producer.
I'm Heather Grish, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrish.com or on Instagram at heathergrish. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today, I'm here with Dr. Sean Sullivan, who's a licensed clinical psychologist and CEO of OnePerfect, where he leads a fiercely caring design, technology, and psychology team spread around the world, sharing a common goal: transform every smartphone into a pathway to health and well-being. Dr. Sullivan began his formal psychology education at Harvard University and finished with a digital health psychology-focused postdoc based at University of California, San Francisco. In the 20 years since completing his graduate clinical research titled The Application of Technology to Psychology, Sean has been practicing psychology, meditating, and developing content and digital health tools to deliver psychology most effectively in our increasingly digital world. He's a good friend of mine. Thank you for joining us today, Sean.
It's great to be here, Heather. Thank you for having me. It's funny listening to someone read your blurb.
Yeah.
That's all accurate. That's what I spend my time doing.
Well, that's really good because that was the bio that you gave me. So I would be really worried if it wasn't accurate, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But when I say that, what I'm thinking of, and I wonder how this feels for you, but I think of when you listen to the bio that, you had a hand in writing about yourself, does it resonate as actually sort of authentically true about how you are spending your time in your life? Because there's a lot of ways to talk about your story or your past. And that's been definitely an effort of mine to get those things in alignment, because then, at least for me, the work in your life flows out of that, more naturally.
Yeah. Sean, can you get on my couch since we're going to talk about psychology today? You're usually the one putting people on your couch. Actually, I have a feeling we'll both be on the couch today. I'd love to start with asking you basically say that you want to transform every smartphone into a pathway to health and well-being. Well, what got you interested in that?
That's not ambitious at all of a tagline. So yeah, first of all, yes, I'm on my own couch. How about that? That's, I think, as close as I can get to your couch, given how we're not in the same spot. But yeah, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm chilling. And what got me into it? I think my dad mostly got me into most everything. My dad, this is a little bit of a winding path to that question, I think, but my dad was a professional tennis player when I was growing up, and my dad's like an amazing person. He's going to be 80 in April. And I thought about him as a king all the time when I was growing up as a kid. He was this great tennis player. He won national titles with Billie Jean King, and he was a great dad. And he taught me all about sports. He was my tennis coach, and he taught me about performance, how to get in the right mindset to perform, and how to sort of visualize a future and set your path there. And so all of those were lessons about, in a way, I could wind and wind, but in a way about psychology. Eventually I came into psychology. That's sort of, you can think about that as performance psychology. And then over time, you get knocked around, and I found myself into real psychology and they're actually on a therapist couch for the first time. And I came to see that those two things are very similar, this process of change that you would take if you're going to become, get yourself into the mindset to succeed, or you're doing well and you want to get to, I think about it as you're not doing well and you want to get to good. That could be the mental health psychology piece. And then you're doing well and you want to get to great can be the performance piece. And then, of course, there's all this stuff in between, the wellness stuff. So, gosh, I didn't even get anywhere near your question, but basically, here's the short link there. So, I grew up and then eventually got into learning about mental health and went back and became a psychologist. In grad school, I was very focused on the application of technology to psychology because, all this cool information, but it's clear the world's going digital slowly, and let's see what's interesting there and what might be possible. And that was 20 years ago. And then I spent my career in that space, both as a clinician, seeing people and teaching the things that I was just talking about, but then also creating content, creating digital product, working in VR, working in creating apps and digital online courses. So I'm going to go for 45 minutes here if I don't stop, Heather.
I love that you're actually on your couch. I'm actually on 2 yoga bolsters right now because I like to be on the floor when I record with people.
That's awesome. You and I have gotten the chance to connect much more again, right, over the last month or so. And it's reminded me about how valuable and how much I value being able to work with the people that you actually want to and sort of spend your time and your day that way. So I'm not surprised that we have similar ways to get comfortable for work.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to learn more about your app and your pathway and the mark that you're trying to make in the world. And I want to learn about your beach hut as well. But let's start with the app.
Yeah.
OnePerfect.
Yeah.
Is it a guided meditation app?
Yeah, so this is OnePerfect Meditation. OnePerfect is the company. OnePerfect Meditation is our first product. It's an iOS wellness app, and it's focused for employers and universities at the moment. We spent all through 2020 piloting with the UC system, UCSC, and now it's being distributed to the students there after many successful pilots and iterations, both through their counseling center there, all the therapists, and then other divisions of the school, and then students, and refining and getting it to where it is today, which is an app. Yes, it's guided meditation, but meditation very broadly conceived here. The main focus of this app is to teach you through experience, through repetitive experience, how to navigate from your current state of mind into the state of mind that you want to be in. And that could mean, you're sad and you want to get back to not being sad, or you want to get to happy, or you're unmotivated and you want to get to motivated, or your mind is racing and you want to fall asleep. So really learning that skill set through practice. And so that means that the app had to become very personalized to what you need right now. And there's all sorts of cool features that connect you to yourself and to a community, which both of those intentions are very much tied, teaching people how to come into the present moment, how to be at peace, and then to emerge in a state of mind that fits them for the day and for what they have to do next.
That sounds really helpful for college kids. I'm just sort of thinking back to my own time in college. What's so important about reaching this population? Are you basically just trying to keep all the kids from going to keg parties?
No, I don't want to get in the way of a good time. No way. Let's see. I started at colleges when I was a grad student, started working in colleges, in the college counseling centers. And it was at a time when the school shootings had just started. I think Virginia Tech was among the first terrible incidents. And so I was seeing this kind of situation, in colleges, but college is like a microcosm for the rest of us also a lot of times for life. So colleges are great. I did a lot of live work on colleges that eventually turned into this app. We would do live shows on college campuses with the students, and they were sharing their vignettes of what they were struggling with. But we were doing it with technology so that students were submitting the things they were struggling with anonymously to a wiki, and then other students would choose what resonated for them, for their campus, and would perform them. And I could go more into what that was like. But the point is that life has moved online. Students have moved online. And so we figured out how to, over the course of many, many years, how to shift that into a model that works online. College is obviously a super tough time and everyone's developing, and there's enormous challenges on college campuses with mental health. It's consistently reported as the number one concern of college administrators. But colleges is just one of the spaces we're in with companies and employees. This is a concept and content that really, to me, fits across the board, because this ability to shift your mindset where you want to go is really core to whatever you want to be doing. But yet the college piece is very close to my heart. I remember struggling in college myself. And it's just such a time of enormous growth. And I've learned, particularly with this digital wellness opportunity, how much you can be of benefit at that time, because a lot of this stuff is just things that you need to learn about how your mind works. So it's not mental health per se, like there's something wrong with you. It's just skills. And once you learn them, then you have them to apply for your whole life. So yeah, I love the younger I could start with someone, the better. Yeah, we do high school stuff also. So
I mean, it makes total sense because everybody's on their phone all the time anyway. And so why not put some helpful content on there for people? It makes complete sense. And Sean, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I almost became a psychologist.
oh, I think you did become a psychologist. You just didn't collect the degree.
Yes, that's why you're on my couch right now. And it's interesting because I too remember college being just an amazing experience, but also like just extremely tumultuous because of the amount of change that I went through. And, even when I graduated, I ended up not, so I was a psych major in undergrad, and I ran an infant studies lab actually when I was in college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, some of the research that hit me the hardest was infant research. I'm sure you came across it, but yeah, that's fascinating stuff.
Well, what we were doing was looking at IQ and play behaviors and temperament and things like that. And the head of my department, who I was very close with and also used to babysit his kids and things like that, he was really into proving that psychology was a hard science. And so that
Mm.
combined with the fact that I was running a research lab sort of wasn't really suited to my personality, running a research lab.
Huh.
Yeah, though I was really into it and interested in it, I was always more interested in designing studies than sitting there and carrying them out.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah. So anyway, I kind of got a little bit burnt out on it in college and I didn't end up going to grad school for it. And something he said to me at graduation was he said this to my mother. He said, "Your daughter is going to regret not going to grad school the rest of her life."
Oh, yeah. I had a high school, person that said that to my dad. Yeah.
Oh, really?
That similar thing, yeah. They meant well when they said it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and actually it was true because I ultimately did end up going to graduate school, but it was to study, get a master's degree in Ayurvedic medicine, which in the end for me just felt like a little more aligned for me. So in the end it worked out well, but I did always regret not going to graduate school. And it sounds like when you were in graduate school, you did an internship at John Kabat-Zinn's Center for Mindfulness and Science. Yeah, tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so I think this was either after my first year of grad school or my second in the summer in between. University of Massachusetts Medical School had, at least at that time, probably still do, an internship for folks that were becoming clinicians to get trained in it. It was MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And this was work that was speaking very directly to this idea of whether psychology was or could become a hard science, at least in my mind. They had rigorous research around trying to identify, some of these, what you think about in psychology as process and outcome research. So, what was affecting change during psychotherapy. For them, it wasn't about psychotherapy. It was about this process of mindfulness based stress reduction. But that became for a lot of therapists, a tool in your tool belt, if you will, in terms of how you might go about treating someone. And they showed that mindfulness based stress reduction, I think, sorry, John Kabat-Zinn, if I'm getting this wrong, but it's either an 8-week or 12-week course session. And I think we were doing it 8 weeks there, but they probably have a range of different lengths of time depending on what you're addressing. And it's really effective for helping people, make changes, whether it's through pain or stress reduction. And there's a whole long story there about how they started working with patients that were terminal, that no one else could really do much for, and seeing if this presence work, which is ultimately what it amounts to, was going to be effective. And just time after time, you saw how effective this was, and there really is a straight line from there. And from a lot of other learnings and a lot of other amazing teachers like Eckhart Tolle to the work that I've always done. So yeah, I've got a lot of value from that for sure.
So there are different types of meditation. I taught yoga and yoga teacher trainings for probably about 10 years.
Well, I haven't learned this part about you very much.
Oh, yeah, about 10 years. And I used to teach yoga teacher trainings up in Marin County for yoga therapy. So
Yep.
I've taught my share of guided meditations, but I have to be honest, I've rarely done guided meditations myself. I'm very guarded about who I let influence my mind, which is kind of ridiculous because just by like watching a show on Netflix, you're letting someone affect your mind.
Well, you mentioned that to me recently, and I thought it makes a lot of sense, especially if you're willing to get yourself into that very sort of open state. Then I do think you want to be careful about what you're inviting in.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I was taught meditation in yoga teacher training, we actually weren't taught much. It was kind of like sit down and sit here and be aware for a
Yeah.
half an hour. It was kind of like an awareness meditation was the initial introduction I had to meditation. And, I learned other methods after that, but all from the yoga lineages, nothing sort of through the field of psychology. But there's so many things that are similar because it's really a lot about where is the awareness? Is there an intention with how the awareness is being directed? So many factors. And it seems like there's this relationship between, or maybe some similarities between meditation, guided meditation, hypnotism. There's something in yoga called yoga nidra. Are
Hmm.
you familiar with yoga nidra?
No, the truth is, I really have steered myself, I think, somewhat intentionally away from some of the reductionism, that occurs when different branches or styles happen. I don't see this as a very complicated topic in a lot of ways, that it's very much about presence and then about where you're intentionally directing your attention. But I also have found, and I do want to hear about what that is about, that different people learn in different ways. So it's so helpful to have all of these sort of different entry points.
Yeah, I mean, yoga nidra is just, it's essentially, nidra means sleep.
Uh huh.
So it's the yogic sleep. It's kind of mostly done on body awareness when people do it. So it would be similar to like a body scanning type of awareness exercise.
Yeah, they love body scans.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a common one. But it feels to me that any type of guided meditation, we'll just kind of maybe say that as a category,
Yeah.
can produce the same effects that a drug could, like any drug, whether it's a naturally, derived drug or a synthetically created drug. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, let me think about that one. What it makes me think is that it's similar as saying that your brain is capable of producing an enormous range of mind states depending on how you use it, depending on where you focus your attention and in the context that you're in. So I think the short answer is yes, and the long answer is that meditation again is a category, but really this is about the capacity of your mind to impact your experience. And I think, to me, one of the things you and I always seems like, for whatever reason, connect on a fairly sort of high level of relationship. But and so I haven't gotten into the weeds of some of this stuff, but I've always appreciated how your work seems to be about the ability of the mind to impact the body. And I think these things really intersect there in a powerful way.
I'm feeling like I'm a sort of a minimalist when it comes to drugs.
Yeah.
I remember I had a psychologist client this was when I was doing my internship at Ayurveda school. And one of my friends who was a psychologist was one of my guinea pigs while I was learning. And,
Yeah.
I remember she was on antidepressants for like 20 years.
Yep.
And I was like, something's,
I mean, so many people either have grown up now on that or, attention deficit medication for really since before they were even developed, their brain had developed.
yeah. And it feels like once a person gets on a medication for something that is mental in, I don't know if it's origin, but something that is perceived as mental in origin,
Mhm.
that they don't really get off of it very often. I mean, do you know if there's any data on like what percentage of people actually get off the drugs once they're on them?
That's a question I feel like as a psychologist I should know the answer to, and I because it's such an interesting question, but I don't know the answer. My psychology practice, I don't prescribe medication, so that was a part of the practice in the sense that, some I would say in my particular practice, less than 10% of the people who I was seeing were using a psychopharmacological treatment also. But sometimes it became really important and useful, it felt like. But I think a lot of the people who came into my practice actually were actively trying to avoid it for whatever reason. That's how that practice developed. So, no. Do you have a sense of what the answer is to that?
I don't. It's definitely something I'd love to look into. It's similar to in my practice now, since I've been working more in fertility, it seems like at least half of the women who show up have been on thyroid medication for a really long time, for example. And I've had some clients get off of it and some that were on it and got off of it, prior to working with me and therefore know the possibilities for healing.
Hmm.
But one of the things that, I also look at herbal medicines as drugs. And so when I say I'm a drug minimalist, I'm also like, let's not have everybody on a bunch of supplements either, because the best thing is just like you being in your environment, living your life, and you don't need all this extra stuff to be healthy. Like, let's design the life so that.
Yeah, I was definitely, my mind was going to that same place as where do you draw that line actually? And I mean, you can have a long discussion about where a drug ends and something else begins. But yeah, it brings me back to the reason that we do we conceive of the product the way that we do because there's a skill set of being able to shift yourself intentionally where you want to go, that regardless of what other supports that you might need and what lifestyle ends up working to best support your ability to do that, it's still a very fundamental piece of how I think, at least, a lot of this work came because for me, it felt very important to practice and learn and repetitively practice those skills. And so a lot of it, I think, like, hopefully your professional life, if you're really following your path, comes from your own sort of what works really well for you. And then hopefully, it resonates with others too. Yeah, that's a little bit off your topic, but just to bring it back to that, yeah, difficult to know where a drug ends and begins.
If you want to create a more receptive body, free from toxins, inflammation, and metabolic issues, would it be crazy for you to explore booking an Ayurvedic consultation with me? There's probably never been a more perfect time to do it. Every day you wait matters when it comes to your health. So if you're ready to get your body back in balance, I'll give you a 30-day plan to get you started. Go to heathergrish.com to book a consultation. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Yeah, because it's like I always think about once everybody stopped smoking, it was like all these other issues popped up, and that sort of wondered if the cigarette was yesterday's meditation.
Oh, oh my God, that's a great line. Was the cigarette yesterday's meditation? I think you need to, yeah, you got to title a podcast that or something. Cigarette is yesterday's.
No, I mean, and it's sad, right? And it's interesting how, you were talking earlier about the teenagers now and the school shootings and things like that. And, the ways that we get out of balance, whether it's mentally, physically, and in cases like that, I got to assume it's both.
Hmm.
And what happens in an environment for a person to get to that place and to that point? And is it just the
Mm,
home, and how much of it is society and things like that? So to me, it feels really clear that there are big cultural misalignments that
mhm,
have to be reimagined and realigned so that the young people can live in better harmony with their natural selves. And I just think about the level of pent up anger and aggression that an individual would have to do something like,
mm,
shoot up a school or something. And that's one of the reasons that I really love what you're doing, because I had a college intern last semester, and She actually ended up dropping out. I think it was a really hard time because of the pandemic, and I'm sure you have some feedback on this. But I think that there's so many people questioning right now certain aspects of established society and
Hmm.
whether or not it really works for them. How have you seen this coming up with the young people in the schools?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with that. I completely follow the line you're traveling there. One thing that I was thinking as you were speaking is that some guy who is one of the smarter people that I've met said to me one day that, we were having this discussion about whether, if you could adopt someone else's real mind, like really live in their experience, would you see it as like just so like categorically differently than your own, or like familiar enough that you could relate? And his thought was, with the exception of people who you really, really know well or really close to, the frame of mind is so different than yours that it's really difficult to think you can know what their experience is. And I've always sort of debated about that with myself and thought about it. And, it's not necessarily a black and white, yes or no question. But when we talk about, especially about a generation like that's 17 or 18 or 20 now versus, 40 versus 60 versus 80, the differences of how information is being processed seem really, really different. And that would lead to just a different relationship to the world. So, I hope I'm not getting too far off topic here, but again, that's what brings me back to, well, go to the root then of what is sort of an authentic feeling experience of life, right? This coming into presence, finding your space, and just observing what is, which is, I was giggling to myself when you said you didn't get a lot of actual training in meditation. I've done this for a long time, and so you've come across a lot of different ways of learning about it. But what I thought of is that I went for 2 weeks to the Green Gulch Zen Center, which I actually live adjacent to. And they did just what you said. They didn't really teach anything. They just said, sit on your cushion and, listen. And I had been doing this for 20 years plus at that point. So I was fine sort of pursuing my path. But I thought, wow, that's so interesting that, as you stay there longer, you're going to get more formal introduction to it. But that is the beginning place. Anyways, I've steered off track.
No, I think it's good because what you're bringing up is, the programming, right? A lot of it's about programming. And when we're young,
Yeah, or not getting any programming at the beginning, right?
mm, yeah,
I guess the way you said it is probably more accurate programming because everyone's getting some, but the family is broken in a lot of ways now. So what we think of as where you would have gotten a lot of your base from is probably for most people really changed.
yeah, it's probably changed a lot since the 70s, when we
Yeah.
started having fast food and family structures changed and things like that.
Hmm.
And now, it's normal because of the way our economy is structured, it's normal for homes to be set up where you have two working parents. And that just can't be easy for anybody who's trying to homeschool their kids right now,
Yeah, yeah.
trying to work. And I mean, today's a holiday, the day that we're recording, and my kid's home from his preschool. And I'm already realizing like how much more difficult it's been for me to focus on my work today because he's usually in the mornings with his teachers and I can focus my attention on the other work that I'm doing. And so that would be really challenging. And so it feels like this situation with the pandemic has really almost squeezed anything that was stressed before in homes could like be squeezing it even more, at least for parents. And I would imagine, also this must be such a difficult time to be a teenager in this pandemic.
Yeah, and again, we can only imagine, but when I do project myself back into that period of my life, like things were so important, so the idea of not getting to play your sport or whatever it was that you were interested in, whether it's even just your next year of school and whatever comes along with that, I think you're right. It's a lot to try to cope with. I think I agree with you that things, in a way, to me, have been pushed so far that for a lot of people, there's this rebirth in a way into just letting go. a bit more. And so I've been noticing it on Zoom calls recently that, and maybe I bring a lot to this, but there is a just willingness to be much more real in the face of what's going on. And so that's for sure an evolving thing. And you can't overgeneralize because everyone's experience is so different. But when we see all of us experience to some degree, and all of us see clearly the incredible pain that's going on out there, in addition to the physical health, all of the mental health stuff, and all of the families in close quarters, and relationally, it's just, which is the core for most of us in terms of our lives, there's just these new guardrails that are changing how we relate. So I had a vision not too long ago about this period as being like everyone kind of getting sent to their rooms to think about how they want to keep doing their life and how they're doing it. Because in a lot of ways, it very literally has been go to your room and spend some time with yourself. So maybe that will lead to good things. It already is, right? We already see some positive things.
I always tell people that it feels like I'm at the ashram because when I went to the ashram in India, I was locked inside.
Oh, like really? That was the deal?
Yeah, you had to ask for permission to leave. It was sort of like committing yourself, and you had to show up at different times for certain things.
Someone telling you what to do? I don't see that going that well.
What's weird is that I actually really loved it. I realize that
The surrender.
there's certain times in my life where I really need a strong boundary, and I think what's interesting is that when I said earlier that, okay, I'm a drug minimalist, I can't say that's always the case. And, it's like in some way, maybe what it says about me is that sort of pattern where I'm not great at receiving help, which is obviously something that I've worked on a
Mm.
lot in my life. And but there are times in our lives where we do need more help, and we need to ask for it when we need it. And that can be hard for some people. It certainly has always been
Mm.
hard for me. And especially with these, young kids right now, with young kids, they don't even know how to ask for help or that there are other people that they can ask for help. So in some way I
Mm.
sort of really support, shoving things in their faces like that can help them. It's like really make them available so that people can help themselves and know that there are better ways of living.
Yeah, and because I've been doing this digital mental health, you could call it, for a long time, you see that actually it seems better not to frame something as here's some help. And so that's why we have arrived at the place that we have, where it's actually here's some great tools that make you feel good when you use them. Because it's not even necessarily for most people about needing help. It's just about that if you can learn some skills that are going to enable you to feel good more days of the week, and you use them because they feel good, so you like them, also is bringing you along a path of, it's encouraging you along your unique journey in life, whatever that is, without trying to tell you what it is, just saying, listen, listen to life a bit, get in the habit of doing that, because there really is a cool and genuine skill there of learning to listen so that you could hear what feels right, feels like the right next thing for your unique journey. I've certainly come to believe that. So, yeah, on the one hand, I think it's so important that we say, here's help when you need it. It's available. It should be one tap away. Like that's more important than one click shopping, right? But yeah, on the other hand, if we can integrate this just into our lifestyles, then it's going to help us make decisions that send us in directions that we don't necessarily need that help, or we don't much of it.
You said that so much more positively than my East Coast
No, I'm from Boston.
attitude. Wait, you're from Boston?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god. You must have had more practice than I have getting out of that attitude. Because 'cause I'm from Rhode Island, we're not that far apart.
That's funny. Yeah. We met out here in California.
It's clear that you've had way more mind training than me, Sean.
No, that's funny though. There's a different culture in California than the East Coast, right?
Definitely. Yeah, totally. And, it's interesting just sort of hearing you talk and reflecting back on why I didn't end up finishing or just completing the pathway with psych. I think it's because this idea that you could change your state,
Yeah.
it was never introduced to me when I was studying it. We spent so much time.
It wasn't introduced to me either, Heather. Like, this is, I think, a great way to frame it. It's not, like it took a while to get to that place, but yeah, I didn't think of it that way. This is, like you said, like a positive introduction to it, but it doesn't need to be negative. It's only negative because mental health, historically conceived, is like a disease-based model of diagnosis, which has its place. So there's a whole debate 40 years. But yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you so much, but yeah, you say resonate. Yeah.
That was helpful to chime in there, actually. And okay, so I have a difficult question for you.
Uh-oh.
What exactly and precisely is a perfect meditation?
Okay, so I like this question. Let me make sure that I remember the right, how we landed on this. But basically, One Perfect Meditation, I love as a title for this product, but we've got a lot of pushback about perfection, needing to be perfect for a lot of people, particularly in our culture. In women, I'm told, I've heard this more from men, I'll say that having been made to feel like you need to be perfect has been a real trigger producer. And I thought, I get it. And I like the idea of using this One Perfect Meditation title to make a real point, which is shifting from that sort of trigger based approach to feeling and being alive into the core of what meditation is. It's silence, it's presence, it is the recognition that life is perfect in this moment as it is if you sit with it and observe it. And so this is a tricky one because when you say that, it's 100% true on a certain level of experience. It's really 100% not true for people when they're in a certain place in their life. But I love the idea of using the app title to really capture the essence of shifting that for yourself. It's pretty heady, and I don't know if does that resonate to you?
Yeah, it does. And, I don't even know that, like, when I think about that being in sort of a peak performance state or, whatever that perfect sort of being in the zone or whatever that state is, whatever you want to call it, it's not always what in a situation that I would necessarily say is positive.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that experience also in some sort of tense situations as well, or some, maybe situations that you might look at as negative. And it's funny, I was teaching an Ayurveda class to a room of yoga teachers once, and I said to them, would we need yoga if there was a bomb going off outside? No, we would all know what to do. Our minds wouldn't be chattering. We wouldn't be, sitting there obsessing about, should I do this? Should I do that? Sometimes that's a really like awful example, but to me, it's like whenever we get in that moment where we just know the work that is required of us to be done in that moment and nothing more than that. And that work might be being still and silent, or that work might be, walking up onto a stage and singing your heart out. But to me, it's really just that finding your place in the flow. And sometimes for me, it's actually kind of surprised me, those moments where I feel that.
Mm.
But you live in a beach hut.
Nice transition. Yeah, so let me just finish a thought on on what you were saying. If is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Before we come back into my beach hut. Yeah, I'm sitting on the couch here, chilling at the beach hut. This is the most beautiful place in the world to me. Just because I wanted to complete the thought, if that's okay with you. The One Perfect Meditation, that's sort of philosophically, right, why it is, but it didn't really answer your question about what makes One Perfect Meditation. And that's the other half of the reason why we call the product this. As a user, you're able to record your own personal insights while you're meditating or at any other time. And you can, so if you, for example, have a way that gets you into the perfect state of mind or that helps you solve for loneliness in your life, you can then save that in your private audio journal within the app and then blend that into your own meditations to perfect them for yourself And then we can also use those, if you share them, if you allow us to, and blend them into other people's experiences so that we're giving sort of the most relevant content at the right time to people.
Oh, that's cool. So you're basically creating a shared
Yes.
experience as well?
Yes, and that's how the community comes into it. So we see, presence is presence in this moment. Presence is also cultivated by feeling connected, not just to the moment and to life and to yourself as an aspect of life and as an aspect of nature, but also to others. And so those tools used in various ways within the app allow us to really stay connected to each other and encourage each other.
I love it. Sean, can we get you to lead us through a meditation?
Thank you. All right. Yeah. Meditation,
I would love it. And maybe,
a little beach hut meditation.
yes, a beach hut meditation. And it'd be great, maybe before you start, to talk a little bit about the intentionality of it, because just to make sure people want to sign up for it.
Yeah, so the intentionality, I think we talked a lot about OnePerfect. And if you go over to oneperfectmeditation.com and you want to check this out, I mentioned this is really focused right now both on universities and then also on companies or organizations that want to support their employees who are struggling right now. And so if you want to get a free trial and check that out for yourself, it's not available, just download and you can use it. It's available for those populations at the moment, but it'll roll out to everyone. And so that's the intention on the side of the app. The intention, I think were you asking about in terms of a meditation, doing a meditation, what would be the intention?
Yeah.
Well, again, to me, this is very simple stuff in the end. It's about setting the intention to come into the present moment so that all 100% of your attention is where you are and in the experience that you are in right now. And one way to think about that is to recognize that sometimes when maybe you come into a space that 10% or 20% of your attention is consumed by thoughts, about what happened before or where you might be going after. And so when I say 100%, that's what I'm talking about, your attention 100% focused right here in this moment on whatever you're doing right now. And that can, if it's work or if it's reading a book, it really can lead to your flow state. And if it's in meditation, oftentimes it's about actually just allowing all content to just go away, flow outside of you. If it's flowing through you, you're noticing it, but it's flowing through you. It's not being attached to by your mind. And so you're just observing and letting life go by. And we know that associated with this state and this intention is a massive reduction in stress. And when you know how to reduce stress, you know how to improve your health because those two things are just viscerally connected. And then also, if you can bring yourself into the present state of awareness with 100% of your attention when you choose to, and we can, try one way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it. Then you can also shift from that space of peace, of silence, of stress-free, back into the state that you want to be in to continue your day. And so that was a long-winded answer. But why don't we just want to do 1 minute and just do a little warm up to connect to ourselves?
That would be great.
Okay, let's do 1 minute. Just get yourself as comfortable as you possibly can. Settle into your space, settle into your seat if you're sitting down, feel your body. Feel your weight pressing against the whatever it's pressing against. And just set the intention to connect your mind and body for a little while. And take a long, deep breath. I love to let my shoulders fall towards the ground, my arms to fall toward the ground. Allow all the distractions to fade away. And just listen. I love to think of it as listening to life go by. Part of the reason, and you might pick it up in the background. I don't know if you're picking up this audio, but for me, when I listen, I hear the beach waves in the background. And some birds chirping. And since we're just doing this for a minute, I'll say, if you take a note right now of how your body feels, it's likely that it feels a little differently than it started 45 seconds, a minute ago. And this is the experience that you're taking yourself on when you begin to meditate. All right, I don't want to jar anyone out of it, but that's a good little practice. Let's take another deep breath and feel your energy coming back up a little bit. How's that, Heather?
That was great. I was noticing I have a headache and trying to let it go.
Well, to all the moms who are doing the homeschooling and taking care of all the kids, my sister's doing the same thing. We thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean. And this was wonderful. And, it's so great to help people feel their presence.
Yeah,
And, it's so much of the complications that we create for ourselves in our lives are really due to stuff that we're, like you said, bringing in from the past or trying to move toward too quickly in the future.
right.
So thank you so much for that. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or learn more about your work?
If you want to go to the oneperfectmeditation.com website, and there's a apply for a demo. If you just click on that and then, write whatever it might be interesting for you and let us know, then that would be probably the best way I can think of.
And there's a great video of you in your beach hut there, I noticed.
Thank you. Yeah, we did some video here. There's an introduction. There's a little bit of a Q&A that's a little longer about what we're trying to do and what we're doing with the product. So yeah, you can check it all out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here with me. And I'm looking forward to sharing this with our listeners. And
Awesome.
yeah.
It's so nice talking to you. I really appreciate it. I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrish.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.